Hello, fellow founders. Welcome to Startup Gospel, where there's always good news for your startup and maybe your soul too. But this is a startup themed episode, which means I am here and only here to transmit to you a lattice of mental models that I believe will change how you see the world and make success inevitable. These are insights I've collected and distilled over a decade of being in the trenches as a co-founder, founding CTO, and most recently chief operating officer of a billion-dollar company that we built up from scratch. So as a great man once said, whoever has ears, let them hear. Let's begin, shall we? All right, so here's how startup-themed episodes are gonna work. In honor of my favorite video game growing up, we're gonna play Startup Gospel Tactics together. And here's what that looks like. The world map shows the layout of the episode, and after we do a quick intro on who this episode is for, we're gonna develop the episode along 3 steps. First, I'm gonna talk about why I think metaphors can be a useful tool for mindset adaptation. Then we're going to talk about surfing the big wave, the main topic of this video. And lastly, we'll bring it home and you'll be ready to join Russ Hanneman in the Tres Comas Club in no time. All right, it's really that easy.
3 commas. 3 commas.
Now, today's episode is for those who are curious about the startup journey. So let's pop into the intro level and see what that's about. Okay, so maybe you're a student who suspects the corporate grind won't be for you. Or maybe you've done the corporate thing and learned an industry inside out, and now you see the potential for a company that should definitely exist but doesn't yet, and maybe you can be the person that creates it. Or maybe you're an existing business owner who's wondering whether it makes sense to jump up an order of magnitude in revenue and complexity. Or maybe you have it pretty good right now, but you wonder whether it's time to start working on the business instead of just in the business for a chance to grow it. And finally, this episode is also good for anyone in your support system to be aware of as well. So as you'll see here, Jake, rest in peace, buddy, is usually with us on our adventures, representing those who have the difficult task of loving us and supporting us during all the ups and downs. All right, so up first, let's talk about mindset adaptation. Origins, okay, let's go there. All right, so this episode was inspired by a recent lunch conversation I had with a family friend of ours, and maybe we're saying something like this. And it was a friend in his early 20s who's interested in starting a company. And so I get asked this type of thing a lot. So I've been looking for ways to shortcut the mindset adaptation process, right? So I say mindset adaptation process because there's actually a rule that goes something like it takes 3 years to become a competent startup founder. And this rule applies even if you know about this rule. And that's already been true in my experience. So I think there's actually not that much you can do to shortcut the information learning process. Like, I guess you can make it higher quality, which that actually is the goal of my instruction here, but I also think you just have to go to sleep about 1,000 times before your neural net and embedding space can accommodate what it means to be a founder. I think this is has to do with like just the sheer amount of information and the lack of intuitiveness if you've never done it before. Okay, so startups are ultimately like a low rep sport, meaning you have to extract a lot of insight from minimal reps. Like in that way, it's actually a lot more like surfing than say golf, for example, which lends itself to high rep practice. You can basically try to groove the swing over a long period of time, doing the same thing over and over and over again in very controlled conditions. So that's high rep. Whereas with startup, just like surfing, no 2 waves are exactly the same, and you kind of have to get the gist or the first principles of a wave very quickly in order to ride waves generally. So that is, I think, a very key insight. So this is actually something that I first heard coined by Josh Waitzkin, and I'll do an episode on some of his mental models later as they apply to startups. So I think that he's generally really awesome at distilling what it means to be high performance and kind of what it means to learn and so on. And so if you don't know who Josh Waitzkin is, rather he is this dude. He's been a lot of things. He's been chess prodigy, a super renowned BJJ practitioner. I guess most recently he's been really into foiling on big waves. Okay, so then mindset adaptation. Okay, what's that about? Well, I've been looking for a way to convey the mindset that someone needs to have in order to succeed at the startup journey. So because the information about running a company and how to start one and blah, 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 it's all basically out there at this point. But it's hard to put into context if you've never done something like that before. So I would say that doing a venture-funded startup for the first time is not something that first-time founders typically have any intuitions about. Maybe if you have, even if you're looking at it from the outside in, like you have a family member or a close friend who's doing it, I don't think that founders typically share their actual struggles while they're in it, right? Like now that I'm on the other side of a lot of this stuff, it's easy to talk about some of the challenges we had, but boy, it would have been really vulnerable at that time to open up about that stuff when the outcome of the business wasn't guaranteed. Like what if that thing that you talked about that maybe you feel like you had something to do was the direct reason why the business ultimately ended up failing? Like, of course, you're not gonna be in the right mindset to share something like that. So that's why I think there's actually a gap in training the mindset of new founders, because you're not gonna, sharing information, sure, I'll do some of that here as well, but I think the most valuable thing I can provide for potential founders or new founders is how do you shift your mindset as quickly as possible in this very low rep sport to, as quickly as possible, think of yourself as a surfer, as a big wave surfer, if that's what you want to be. And of course, there's other resources to learn how to do the actual surfing mechanics, which we'll go through as well. But I would say the latter, that i.e. the information about the skills and mechanics, has been way more commonplace than the former, which you can usually only find in like mentorship or a super expensive coaching or something like that, right? Okay, so I came up with 3 metaphors that communicate key truths of the startup journey and use these to intuit what it, quote unquote, feels like to do a startup. So the first of these, of course, is called surfing the big wave, and that is a topic of today's short video. All right, we're back on the world map. Let's just do the formalities here and see that we cleared the section on mindset adaptation. So next up is surfing the big wave. Let's get to that. All right, cool. We're back on the iPad for the main topic of today's episode, which is surfing the big wave. Everyone immediately starts picturing something like this. This is actually a video from Nazare, notorious for having some of the biggest waves in the world. But that's actually the least insightful part of this metaphor. Actually, it's not a wrong metaphor. I mean, it's when you're actually in the growth phase, and that's typically when people notice the company and start knowing about the company. It does actually kind of feel like this. Yeah, I mean, you're going like at the complete limit, going super fast, and you're like, this is like Series B, right? And then boom, you hit that growth curve. Oh my gosh, you're hitting Series C. You might get swallowed up by the market. Somehow you're still staying ahead, but barely. Every day is like touch and go. You may or may not make it. You're gonna crumble under your own weight, but somehow you make it through. And wow, everyone celebrates. What an amazing ride. Okay, so I would say that the glory part of having a successful company actually does more or less feel like this. However, the journey of getting to this point is so far from what everyone focuses on, right? Like we only ever notice due to survivorship bias what it's like when you're actually on the big wave. So this is the part that everyone wants to talk about, that wants to revel in, but I'm not sure who the surfer is, but like this person here, like this photo op is not some overnight thing. It's the culmination of an entire career. Like what you're not seeing is the countless hours spent surfing smaller waves, prepping for this, building up to this. There's a bunch of people who try to surf a big wave and couldn't do it. Probably somebody got badly injured. You don't really hear about those people a lot. And that's very similar to like in a company. There's a lot happening before you ever heard about a company. So what I'm actually more interested in is the stuff that happens leading up to surfing the big wave. So in fact, follow me to another beach long before this wave ever formed or broke. All right, Eden's Inlet. That's where we're going next. Jump cut. Okay, so actually we're not going to Eden's Inlet just yet, at least not in this episode. Predictably, I haven't yet developed a reliable inner timer, so as I'm staring down the rest of my raw footage in my video editor, we're gonna need a multi-part episode. In fact, as a general rule, I'm gonna try to keep my videos to about 8 to 11 minutes in length, so I will see you in part 2 and beyond, released in the coming days. I'm gonna cut to the intro that I recorded just because I think it's cool to have a sign off from my very first day of ever recording a YouTube video. And I think that is the appropriate way to sign off on the first episode. All right, team, that's it for today. First ever episode of Startup Gospel in the books. There will be many more to come. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with your co-founders, fellow founders, or even a future founder or business owner that you know. May peace be with you. And when you finally find that success you've been looking for, remember to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. See you next time.
My own brand. Tres comas.